Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Rike Tissot 1, or at least that's how I'm going to pronounce it. A lot like the watch brand. It has an element that we've seen before from Rike, and that's that the shell actually comes off the back and you can release it via this switch. There's some other elements here. This knife has some awkward design choices. It's definitely a cool knife, but it's also an expensive knife. So we're going to cover all of that stuff. Thanks so much to Rike for sending it in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. I will link this knife down in the description so that you guys can check it out if you want to. Let's go ahead and measure this knife. It is definitely a full-size knife. Overall length is coming in at about 8 1/4 inches. Blade length is coming in, surprisingly, at almost 3 3. Is it? Boy, it's almost 3 3/4, like 3.7. Cutting edge is about 3.65. This is a very strange, I'm going to show this to you. What on earth? The choice of this is just bizarre. It's definitely going to look funny over time as you sharpen it. I don't know why they chose to do it that way. Yeah, that's a thing there. So just wanted to point that out because I know people are going to ask about it. Weird. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. So, any custom skills you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. Up against the AD10, you can see here, it's a pretty big knife. Not a massive knife, but definitely a big knife. Up against something like the AD20.5, definitely larger there. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Once again, large, right about the same overall length as the Spyderco Para 3. Maybe the Para 3, I'm sorry, the PM2. The PM2 might be a little bit longer. Definitely way more cutting edge. And then finally, up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the Hogue Deca. How's the action on this knife? Well, the pivot action is great. If you're familiar with Rike, you'll know that they probably have some of the best machining execution on the planet. There's a few different companies that I say that about. Riot is definitely one. Maxace is absolutely like beautifully capable in terms of like OEM machine work, right? And Rike, absolutely. It's not just that they're able to make a knife with really, really good fit and finish, but they can do things that you wouldn't expect of even some of the premier, OEMs out there. Really amazing stuff. They can also make much more straightforward designs. This is actually a pretty tame design. If you've seen something like the Rike Alien, right? This is very tame for Rike. So I want to make sure that you guys know, especially if you're new, what I'm about to complain about is not, a normal reflection of Rike's ability to machine things. In fact, it's not an issue with machining quality. It's just the way that they decided to make this thing that you use to deploy it, the way that they decided to shape it is just weird, right? Now, this can be removed, and I know you guys probably want to see it, so let's just go ahead and remove it. But this thing that you use, the best way that I can engage with it is to literally ignore this whole, it looks like you're supposed to put your finger like in here and use it. It's so smooth, like the angle, there's just not enough there to grab your finger, right? And you're like, okay, well just use the fuller and reverse flick it. There's not, the ledge is down here. There's no ledge at the top of it. So there's nothing to reverse flick. You putting your finger in this little nook right here will result, it's just like a skate ramp. My finger just slips off of it. So the only area that has a ledge is this area right here. And that's where I can use it to deploy. So that's frustrating. I don't like this. This should have just been not such a lazy angle. It should be much more of a ledge to cut your finger. What it does do a great job of is running into things that you're cutting, because it's like in a huge chunk of the cutting path, the initial cutting path. So this piece, like the way that it's machined, yeah, it's really nice. It's just the way that they did it is just cumbersome, not cumbersome, but it's very counterproductive. Why would you take it off? I don't know, but you can. It looks like it's two different screws here. So we'll remove this first little T8 screw, and then we'll remove that little teeny tiny thing, whatever the heck that is. I cannot stand itty bitty little fasteners on. I mean, as if like pocket knives weren't fussy enough. We have to deal with itty bitty little fasteners sometimes. T8 and up. Get rid of every time I, complain, or if you want to say that I'm crying about it, right, whatever. Every time I do that, someone's like, all you have to do is just get a quality driver. Yeah, anybody who's used, or not quality driver, quality bits, quality driver as well. Anybody who has used, these types of tools for a long enough period of time will tell you that there's a certain size of things that just sucks. And, in my experience with pocket knives and taking pocket knives apart, the size that sucks is T8 and smaller. For some reason, that's like not wanting to come out any further. That's really weird. I kept thinking that maybe it just needed to grab like another set of threads, but it's just like not wanting to come out. So I'm going to try loosening this other itty bitty little thing that could be, who knows? Could it be a T5? Boy. Yeah, it is a T5. Why does this even exist? What a bizarre choice. I don't know why we need both, but okay. And then does this even, it acts like it kind of wants to. Truthfully, I can't get this other screw to come any further back. I'm trying to pull backwards on it and sort of unscrew at the same time. Oh, are we finally going? Yeah, there we go. So it's like another set of threads or something that it had to hit. And we are almost there. And then I can show you guys, I guess, what this looks like with this off of here, which some people, given the fact that it's not really that beneficial, no, you know what? It looks ugly. And I'm realizing it's also part of the stop. That's interesting. So right here, you can see it actually, the parts of the shell, there's like an open area, and the back of this is actually engaging with the frame. So no, you can't take that off, and you wouldn't want to anyway because this looks terrible. So this is a really weird choice of thing to have here. This whole thing should have just been removed or just made. Now, I was about to say that it should have been a stud or something. Maybe there's probably a way to have like a more designy looking stud in there and make that work. But the whole knife has this very like modern aesthetic, and so that's what they're trying to do is complement the aesthetic with like kind of a unique opening mechanism thing. And basically it just needs a sharper ledge or something that's going to more readily catch your finger, because this requires you to very specifically interact with it. And even there, even then, it's not satisfying. That's the thing. I want it to deploy readily. I don't want to have to think about it. I want it to be convenient, and I want it to be satisfying. And it is none of those things. It's really just annoying, and it's in the cutting path. So it looks kind of neat. Like it goes with it, right? It also, I don't know, kind of. It also kind of looks like somebody wearing a tuxedo with a ball cap. This is kind of out of place. I just don't, that's such a strange design element. So the piece itself is nicely machined. The fit and finish on everything is very good, right? The pivot action is good, but the way you deploy this thing is just kind of stupid. I don't like it. And it's very uncharacteristic of Rike. Usually, everything is like, really, there's like high satisfaction and, high ease of manipulation with all of this stuff. So this is just a really weird choice. That piece right there is really holding this thing back, because the rest of it, honestly, is pretty cool. I'm realizing that I have this unlocked. There's a reason that it cannot come off, right? We'll talk about that. Or it cannot come off accidentally. But anyways, so yeah, long action segment there. And I got curious and wanted to see what was underneath there. And I'm sure some of you guys may have wanted to as well, but there you go. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on into carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's a little thick. Yeah, it's thicker, definitely. Length and height up against the PM2 and Pair 3. It's not really a super awkward object to carry in the pocket. I mean, it's this frame. We're gonna get to the frame for sure, but it's just kind of the way that I've got it locked is incorrect because of the pocket clip, which we'll talk about. But length and height, it's similar to carrying the PM2. It's just going to be heavier because it is titanium. Not quite as tall though. Let's go ahead and we've already kind of done a little bit of the hardware, but let's go ahead and do the rest of it. So the way that you engage with the pivot, you can see right here, this is such a weird pivot too. It's like a wagon wheel pivot. That's the other thing that looks super out of place, honestly, is a pivot there. But it actually on one side does have a way to, adjust it. I'm going to get out my tools. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. We're going to start with a T10. Might actually be a little bigger. Nope, that's a T10. So T10 here, which is great. You need a T8 here and a T5 for this stupid little thing. And then most likely, yeah, that's going to be a T8 for the pocket clip, which I'm actually going to go ahead and demonstrate now, is something, excuse me, my allergies. You actually have to remove the pocket clip in order to remove that back sheathed frame. Now, a lot of you are not seeing, something like this for the first time. You're probably like super familiar with Rike's systems where they've done this in the past, right? But the pocket clip has to come off, and you can see the sheath part of the frame is connected to this internal part of the frame via this screw, right? So once you've got that off, the switch is either engaged or disengaged. I can never remember. You need like a locked and unlocked symbol so that people know, right? Because what you're doing is you're guessing and you're pushing against the frame and back. But the main thing here is sheathed within this device is a sharp blade. I have stitches from the first lamella because I was putting pressure in an area that was unsafe and it was largely my fault. But knowing whether or not the sheath is engaged or disengaged or locked or unlocked would be super helpful. There we go. So you're going to pull backwards. Okay, I got it. And, I'm sure that Rike has a video, right? They almost always have a video explaining exactly how to do this. But a lot of people who buy these won't seek that video out or won't know that it exists. And they'll just try to take it apart themselves, which is something that a lot of us do that are into pocket knives, right? And various other things. But you can see how this kind of hooks on here. So initially, and the tolerances are super tight, right? This push forward is unlocked. Push down is locked, right? But essentially, I'm going to tell you how I got this off of here, and it's not a pleasant experience. It's so tight, and there's so much friction, right? Figuring out where to grab to get it to release is weird because you're trying to hold on to the thing, but you're also creating more friction by poking on it. I realized it's most likely hooked down here. So what I ended up doing was actually pounding. You can hear it. It snapped right there, or that click. It's because those hooks disengaged after giving it a tap on I gave it a little tap on the booty. That should be a much simpler process. This is so, when it's in place, it's very well held in place, and that's good because you don't want it to accidentally come apart. But the process of getting it apart is a little bit clunky, right? So what's the idea behind this? It kind of eliminates steps, it might eliminate a couple of steps, right? Depending on the average number of fasteners on a pocket knife, right? If you're like comparing this to disassembling a Benchmade axis lock, well, yeah, there's fewer steps to doing this. Would I call it less frustrating? I don't know. I mean, it's frustrating in its own way. The other the benefit here is that once everything's together, I don't think anything can back out because you need the pocket clip to hold it in place. Or I'm sorry, the pocket clip has to be removed in order for the thing to come apart. I'm realizing now that that's not wanting to switch fully backwards. There we go. You have to make sure that switches all the way back there. So it's just basically just really finicky. And I feel like this needs to be, the pieces are there for this to be a good system. But I don't feel like it was well executed here. Is this a T10? Do I still have the T10 in there? No, this is the T8. So yeah, the benefits again are once the screw for the pocket clip is in and that thing is locked down, there's no way that it comes apart. The disadvantages are it's kind of clunky to pull it all apart. It's kind of like an awkward process. I don't love it. They've definitely done these sheathed systems that have been better in the past and worse actually with the initial lamella. Ideally, this would be, push the button and then it comes off, right? But everything would be held in place well enough that it would take deliberate force. Number one, deliberately unlocking the thing, and then very specific deliberate force to get it to, come apart. But this takes like too much force and in specific directions, and it's just kind of a clunky process. So I don't love that. It's neat and it is expensive to do. Whether or not it, it's not the most graceful system, but it is more expensive to do, definitely, to machine these parts to get them to operate like this, right? This is nowhere near as inexpensive as just a standard sandwich construction, 2 pieces of titanium and M390 or whatever, that we normally see for like $200. Yeah, this is definitely going to cost more money. It's not the same thing, even though it's made out of the same materials. So, anyways, have we weighed it? No, probably not. They have an Ultim version of this that they, for some reason, charge more money, like this back piece on their website. It's like $20 more to have the back piece made out of Ultim. Come on, Rike, don't do that. Let's not do this thing where we like pretend that Ultim is some like magical material, right? The materials themselves are not, what make up. Not all by themselves does not make up what the final price tag is, right? It's a small part of the equation, but it's not the equation, right? So Ultim is a popular material right now, and so some companies are like, yeah, oh, you want Ultim, and you get pay, it's a special material. It's not, right? I mean, that should be the least expensive option. For some reason, it's $20 more than standard titanium. It doesn't make any sense. So. Anyways, the reason I'm telling you this is because one of the versions is going to weigh a little bit less with that piece being made out of Ultim. So this version here with the DLC titanium, which is more than the standard titanium, this is 5.1 or about 5.1 ounces, and then M390, for the blade. So a lot of titanium and then M390. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of the blade stock thickness, which looks pretty darn thick. I bet that's at least 155, perhaps 165 thousandths. Let's see. Ooh, it's even more than that. I think it's about that's a weird blade stock thickness. 175? Yeah, 175 thousandths. So definitely on the thicker side. Okay. Another little complaint, Rike. I can't find anywhere. I realize with a lot of your blade steels, like I can't find the HRC range. Even the listing of this guy on Smoky Mountain Knife Works, like I want to know. I'm sure that they hit at least the industry standard, which is 59 to 61. But if you're doing better, I'd like to know. If you're doing worse, I'd like to know. The people buying the knives, like we want to know what your HRC range is for the M390. I couldn't find it anywhere. Using it to cut, things like cardboard and stuff like that, the edge did not like immediately fatigue the way that, low HRC M390 does, right? But just carrying this and using this, the edge feels fine. So I have to imagine that the heat treat is at least that 59 to 61 range. But yeah, so their satin finish is actually really nice on this guy. And another thing I want to, since I've been picking on this thing a little bit, 2 things. Number one, this is a pretty darn thin edge down here. You've got a little bit, just a little bit of a hollow grind here, and it does get nice and thin. The geometry on this is really, really great. It's also a really nice looking satin finish. That is just a clean satin finish. Looks good. Like how the blade looks. Truthfully, it's pretty comfortable, but these areas in here are just like 90-degree ledges. Like the lock-in is pretty good. This area up here, they've got this separate little index finger position right up here, and it's pretty comfortable, but yeah, these areas right here, it's just like a 90-degree drop-off. It's kind of sharp. Almost feels almost unfinished. Like this should have had little chamfered areas, right? It's just kind of weird. Like back here, this is all nice and smooth and everything. But yeah, these areas are a little bit sharp. Outside of that, it's okay. The pocket clip is also a little tall. It's kind of angular, right? It's okay, not bad. Jimping, yeah, there's plenty of traction right here, so plenty of lock-in. That's all fine. It's just stuff's going to get hung up on this deployment. It's like a little alien spaceship that's just attached, like a weird little robot barnacle attached to the top. It's just bizarre. The combination of that and the wagon wheel pivot is just weird. Like, it's a really, really well-made object. It's just such a goofy, bizarre design. Everything that's supposed to make it interesting or convenient, it just makes it, it's just awkward. It's such an awkward knife. We have the Rike logo back here, and then unfortunately they had to put Tissot on there. You don't have to put the name of the knife on the knife. You don't need to do that. But they did, so okay. It says M390 right here, and then these are numbered, as is usually the case with Rike knives. As far as I know, this is a Richard Wu design. Same person behind a lot of the Rike designs. And almost all of his designs are really, really good. This one is just really weird. The spine is crowned. This is a nice little touch right there. What else was I going to point out here? The other nice thing about this design and the way that this shell sits on here is it covers up any other hardware or anything that's holding the system together. There's nothing except for the pivot being shown, which is kind of nice, and it gives you that integral look. Right? It's not really an integral. It's still two pieces. It's actually three pieces, technically. Well, not technically. It is. Yeah, it's three pieces, right? But it covers everything up, which is kind of neat, right? It's just interesting. It's not like, knives need this system in order to be better. This doesn't necessarily make this knife better, but it does make it interesting, right? Which is very common in the knife world to see elements that don't really give the user any specific advantage, but it's neat. It's fun, right? That's the kind of stuff that we, as knife people, are interested in. So yeah. The pocket clip, what does it say on the pocket clip? Oh yeah, Richard Wu 2024. So there you go. That also does not need to be there. I don't know why that is on the pocket clip, but it is, so okay. This is a nested liner lock, which is cool. I like to see that. I like, the fact that you can squeeze on this knife and all the pressure goes into the frame and it doesn't necessarily mess with the lockup or the lockup geometry or the lockup percentage or anything like that. And fortunately, there is no frame lock to put excess pressure on, because doing that and trying to figure out exactly how to engage with this thumb thing would probably be even more frustrating. So yeah, it's good that it's a nested liner lock. I do appreciate that. It is a little bit sharp. Again, the way that you engage it or the area that you engage it is just like, it's got teeth and it's kind of a 90-degree angle. So it's not incredibly comfortable to interact with, but it's also far from the worst, right? There's no lefty option, which is a bummer. Lefties, you just don't have a pocket clip option. You're used to this, right? You've got to carry the knife in your right-handed pocket, or just carry it incorrectly in your left-handed pocket, right? However you want to do that. Like I said, this thing right here is the stop, like the way that it engages, like that's what's stopping it. And then also, is it the stop in the closed position? Yeah, it is. You can actually see the mark on the frame. So that's what's being used as the stop, okay? It does run on bearings, and it's plenty smooth, right? Like I said, I mean, it's really easy to disengage for sure. There is no blade play. Excuse me. The lockup is definitely solid. They always do a good job there. No lock stick, no pivot lash. Very, very smooth and consistent. And here, the detent is all right. I mean, it's nice that it's lighter, especially with this. I think the detent could probably be a little heavier, but more importantly, the way that you engage the knife should just be better. This is just not an enjoyable way to engage with the blade. And the centering is perfect, as you would expect on a Rike knife with, actually, I haven't experienced this in a while. It's wild. A little bit of detent lash, and it probably has to do with the fact that where the detent ball is and how this is engaging with the frame in the stop position. That's weird. A little tiny bit of detent lash there. Okay. Lot of nitpicking here. Not my favorite Rike, not by a long shot. It's very awkward. I don't feel super safe taking the shell off of the back. I think it's nice that once the screw's in place with the pocket clip, that there's just no way that it could, I mean, even if you accidentally have the frame unlocked, it's not going to come out unless that screw, I mean, the screw would have to back out in the pocket. It's kind of an interesting way to keep that all held together, and it doesn't increase the number of steps. But I feel like just the standard way without having the pocket, I feel like allowing this to release after you deliberately press that switch is probably how most people would want it. I think that's how I would want it too. I just don't like the different directions and the amount of force I have to apply to get it to come off. It's just a little bit too much work, right? The design has a lot of weird elements. This guy, this thing here, this weird curved area behind the initial cutting edge, and the sharp areas right here. Really weird. Their pricing is, I have no idea. The standard titanium one is close, right? It's like $360, $365. Yeah, and then they have the Ultim version, which is for some reason $20 more. That makes no sense. And then this DLC titanium one, and the DLC is always going to cost a little bit more money, but that guy's way up there, almost at $400. I think right at $350 or slightly less, like $330 to $350 for, like, let's say you did $330 for the Ti and the Ultim, right, or a little less for the Ultim one. The Ultim one probably should be closer to $300. And then maybe $350 for the DLC one, right? This is definitely a more premium and more complicated object than your standard Chinese high-end production folding knife. Nobody should be comparing this to like what Artisan Cutlery makes for $200, right? Those are nice knives. This is not a $200 knife. No way. It's definitely a knife that should cost over $300 because of the way that it's put together. And Rike's, more complex machining, their attention to detail. It's the design choices in this thing that are bothersome. It's not that because of the design choices, the price should be lower. No, I mean, it's expensive to create. It's just they need to change the way that this is designed, right? The way that you interact with the knife, taking it apart, deploying it, all of that stuff. And some other edges definitely need to be changed to chamfered better. But the whole thing, to be able for people to justify that price tag, like that's what needs to be altered. So, yeah, too expensive, too awkward, just far from my favorite thing that Rike has put out. So it's a little bit of a weird review, but yeah, those are my conclusions there. I'll link it. You guys can pick it up if you want to, but I think you should look, if you're going to go to Rike's website or the website that this is listed on, I would look around because they have other versions of like the sheath system on other knives that it just works way better. So not a big fan of this one. That's going to be pretty much it from me today, guys. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at _metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.